What's up, guys? It's Jim from Wrestle Wellbeing here. Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Unseen Battles, where today I'm joined by a man whose name is synonymous with the grit and technical excellence of the British independent circuit. For over 2 decades now, he has been the cornerstone of the industry, competing for nearly every major promotion across the UK and Europe. To the fans in the rafters, he is known as the Prodigy and the Brain of Pain, a multi-time champion in LDN and Mega Slam, and a veteran who has shared the ring with the best in the business. But beyond the championships and the Extreme Rules Wars, he is perhaps making his most significant impact behind the scenes as a head trainer at the Aspire Wrestling Alliance. He's molding the next generation of stars while using the squared circle as a tool for social change, mental health advocacy, and community support. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the Unseen Battles. Please welcome to the Wrestle Wellbeing podcast, a true stalwart of the British wrestling scene, Mr. Paul Malen. Paul, thank you so much for joining me.
Wow, thank you very much for the intro. That was really good. Appreciate it.
It's my absolute pleasure. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. Again, thank you for having me. It's great to do these kind of things and to open the curtain a little bit, talk about mental health, and answer some questions about the 21 years this year that I would have been involved in professional wrestling for.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you on, Paul. Like I say, I really do appreciate it. But to start us off, Paul, can you take us back all those years? What actually got you into professional wrestling? Is it something that you've always wanted to be in ever since you were a kid, or is it something that you sort of came into later on in life?
So it's my story. I find is quite a lot different to many people that probably you've spoken to, or indeed I speak to, because a lot of people that I know get into it in their teens or kind of from late childhood. Whereas with me, my earliest memory of wrestling is being 5 years old, sat on my dad's knee, and my dad screaming at the television because he absolutely hated Ric Flair. He loved Randy Savage and he loved Rowdy Roddy Piper just because they were kicking the everlasting trash out of Ric Flair on a week-to-week basis. So, I was 5 years old. My favorite wrestlers growing up were the likes of Bret the Hitman Hart, The Ultimate Warrior, Hulk Hogan, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, all these colorful characters, almost like comic book characters come to life. And then years later, in my late teens, early 20s, I come to appreciate more of the technical wrestling style, like Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, Dean Malenko, Randy Orton, etc., etc. So many other stars, kind of like that. But I'm always a sucker now for colorful characters. Like one of my favorite ones to watch at the moment is Obafemi. I think he's absolutely amazing. And again, you just look at somebody like that and it screams professional wrestling, in my opinion.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. So, can you tell us how you actually got into becoming a professional wrestler yourself? Where is it that you first started training?
So I left school in 2001. That's how old I am. I'm 41 this year as well. So I left school in 2001, and at that time, Sky One had just started showing the first season of Tough Enough. And it made me realize that, wow, like there's actually like a way you can get into wrestling. And I remember my mum was at work and we'd be pulling the sofa cushions off of the chairs and teaching ourselves how to bump and all this kind of thing. And on the very last day of school, a friend of mine came up to me and he'd got Power Slam. I'm not even sure if Power Slam magazine is still a thing now, but it was one of the first issues of Power Slam magazine, I think. And he'd torn out an advert, and I've still got it somewhere. I'll find it out somewhere. But it was an advert for a wrestling training school in Kent called the NWA UK Hammerlock. And you had to apply to take part in a opening training day. And so I'd never traveled anywhere on my own ever. I think I'd probably been on the bus for a 10-minute journey on my own at that point. But there I was at 17 at this point, traveling to Kent on my own, navigating the trains and the London Underground and stuff like that. And I've never looked back since then.
Fantastic, bud. Fantastic. What? How was that first training session for you? What was it like when you took your first bump?
It was terrifying, and I remember when myself and my friend that went for our first time there, we walked up to what was a social club, which had been kind of converted into their wrestling training school, and there was a line of guys just like us waiting outside, very eager to get into their first stages of learning and stuff. And I remember walking in, seeing the ring, a matted area, and I just thought, wow, this is amazing. And one of the bumps that I was always terrified of doing was the front flip, landing on your back into a break fall and stuff. And I remember we'd been through the other two bumps, and the trainer at the time, John Ryan, says, "Okay, we're going to do the flip now. You showed us how to do it." And he was like, your turn. And in my mind, I was like, I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm not going to be able to do this. And then first time, bang, nailed it. And I was like, wow. So it's kind of, that was my first time doing that. I was like, wow, I could actually be better at this than I think I am. So yeah, but 21 years later now, the bumps are catching up with me quite a lot. So I'd advise anybody to bump less.
Absolutely, but absolutely. What would you say is it being the when you first started out? Sorry, what would you say was the best piece of advice that your trainer gave you?
It's difficult to say it because, again, this is kind of pulling the curtain open a little bit, because training schools are a lot different now to what they were back then. Back then in 2005, it wasn't necessarily as open and inviting as it is now. You didn't have training schools in every town. You didn't have training schools local to you. You had to really want to do this. And you had to travel to do this, and you had to put up with quite a lot of they call it hazing now, because if you were to be performing on shows, I was quite often reminded when I made it to the bigger shows that I was taking somebody else's job. So again, they tested you and they challenged you to make sure that you were trustworthy and that you appreciated the spot that you had. So I didn't necessarily get given much advice. If anything, the only advice that I was given was to keep going and to just stick with it, because it teaches you a great deal of appreciation for the spot you have when you finally get there. And this is something that I experienced in my first few years of wrestling as well. And I think, if I'm being quite honest with and I'm not saying like I was bullied or anything like that, but again, I was tested, I was challenged, I was made sure to know every single show that I was on that I was potentially taking somebody else's spot. And I didn't necessarily get as welcomed in as people would be to this day. But those people that challenged me and tested me back then, years later, they were the people that would remember my name, shake my hand, make the effort to shake my hand, and again, talk to me like I was one of their own, just because I stuck with it and I showed the respect and put the hard work and the effort in, which was important back then.
Absolutely. So, obviously, if you're comfortable sharing this, can you describe what sort of like the worst type of hazing you ever received was?
Yeah, sure. So I remember, again, my first year was a great learning experience, because I only had a couple of people that were kind of trustworthy in terms of advice, which was my main trainer. But all of the smaller shows that I was going out to there and stuff, they weren't the best experiences. It was a case of getting your reps in, but a lot of the time it was the case of the inmates running the asylum, which never really goes well. Finally, when I made it to the big time, what I thought was the big time, because these were the shows that I grew up kind of going to watch around the UK. That was when I thought, wow, like, I've made it. I made it. But then you'd be in the ring with somebody that would, and again, this is an experience that I had, they would be bumping you and bumping you and bumping you until the ring broke, in one case for me. And it was funny because I broke the ring from getting thrown, but it wasn't me that was told off. It was the more experienced wrestler that was told off. So it kind of came back to bite them. Again, another thing that I had was being in the changing rooms. I think it was a Boxing Day. Being in the changing rooms with one other guy, and then an American guy came in and said, "Oh, you know, like you think it's cold? I'm from the Rocky Mountains. You don't know what cold is." I was like, "Oh, okay." And I had my match. Came back from my match to have a shower, and the guy was like, "Oh, you know, what are you taking a shower for? You should be going out and helping with the ring." So I was like, "Okay." So I went out and helped with the ring. I came back, and then the guy says, "Oh, you know, you should take a shower. You stink." And it's little things like that because I was very, very new. Some would say overly too eager, to the sense where I was kind of talking to people thinking that I was on their level or their friend when I wasn't, because they didn't know me. That's one of the only ones that comes to mind, really. And I'd never had any experiences where I was beaten up or I'd anybody doing anything to me in particular. Or again, these were things that I came to expect because it was explained to me right from the very start. When you go to events, you shake everybody's hands. You can never be too helpful. You sit down, you keep your mouth zipped, and your eyes and your ears open, ready to learn. So, if anything, that's what I learned firsthand from the first few years that I was doing this.
Okay. Do you think that if you hadn't received that sort of treatment, that you would be the person that you are today in terms of obviously your training style and your work ethic?
Absolutely not. Like I fully appreciate the way that I was brought in and those experiences that I had, because I remember doing this the touring shows for All Star Wrestling. Again, fantastic shows they were, and I know they're fully revamped now, and it's Brian Dixon's grandson that runs those shows now, and they look absolutely amazing. It's so good to see that it's still around. But yeah, back in those days, the more experienced were the ones that tested you and challenged you. And I remember one time thinking, I've had enough of this. Like I'm not going to come back and stuff. And I remember walking to my car, and I remember being followed by a bodybuilder, literally being chased to the car by a bodybuilder, and he just says, "Oh, just to let you know that they did the same to me." And I was like, "What?" And this was a giant that was miles taller than me. And I was like, "What, they do the same to you?" He goes, "Yeah, it's what they do. You know, it's how you get into this. You know, so don't give up." So I just took that one time for that guy, Mark, bless him, and he came to me and told me that, and I kept going. If he hadn't come to me that day, I would probably have quit wrestling, because it came to that point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. I've had enough. But yeah, thankfully to him, I stuck with it. But it does come through to my training now, because that taught me, you mentioned grit earlier, that taught me to persevere, and that taught me to realize that this really isn't for everybody. You have to really want to do this, to be a part of this. And I try to put that into my experiences and other people's experiences. I like to teach everybody that trains with myself and Aspire Wrestling to be respectful, to be helpful, and again, to just treat this with the respect that it deserves and not kind of take the mickey out of it.
Absolutely, bud. So, for those of you, for those out there that have followed your career, you made a very rare decision to go full time on the UK independent scene. What was the sort of sink or swim moment during that first year that tested whether you could truly survive and wrestle on your own?
So I started full time in 2009. And this was a case of me before having several jobs, side jobs, working full time, and at the same time trying to wrestle full time as well, which was absolutely exhausting. And I remember one of the last, normal jobs, one of the last normal jobs I had was working for a double glazing sales place. And I was working on a busy trade counter selling windows, doors, door locks, window handles, all this kind of thing. And secretly, I was wrestling. Nobody knew. Nobody knew. And I was coming in probably every other day with bruises, absolutely exhausted. I don't know what they thought I was into. But the guy I was working with, I remember sat there on our lunch and he's flicking through this newspaper. And I'm kind of just looking around. He goes, "Do you know, I was flicking through the TV the other night," and he's flicking each page in this newspaper. And he was like, "And that fake shit American wrestling came on." And I just remember thinking, and I looked at him and I went, "You know, don't you?" And he went, "Yep." And it turned out I was on a show, not too local, but there were posters with my face on around the local area to where I worked. And I think I lasted a day after that because I thought, you know what, this life isn't for me. And I wrote my notice. I literally tore a piece of like note paper out of a book, and I wrote my notice on the note paper, and I walked in and I handed it to my boss. He says, "Oh, you've got to give 2 weeks." And I thought, yeah, okay. I gave 2 hours notice and I'd gone. And I think I'd started full time then a couple of days after. It's not easy. It's never easy. I don't think it's a case of it just being the first year. If you're wrestling full time, you are constantly thinking of ways to save money, because if you get hurt, then you are relying just on the money that you've made, or you are relying on merchandise, or you are relying on, I don't know, the kindness and generosity of others, because there is no health insurance for this. And what we do, if you're sick, you don't get paid. If you take time off, you don't get paid. Again, I get this all of the time with eager young hopefuls that come in and like, "Oh, I want to do this full time. How do you get into this full time?" And my advice is always stay in school, go to college, go to uni, get something to fall back on. And the answer is always the same. There is hardly any money in pro wrestling unless you have a unique selling point, and unless you are somebody that can travel everywhere to every country and do this, and you can sell lots of merchandise. Again, it's not for everybody. I did it for 10 years, and I can't remember a time when I was ever comfortable to the point where it's like, okay, I can take some time off. I can afford this. I can afford that. It's never easy. I think anybody out there that is wrestling full time would also back me up on that. It's not for everybody again.
Absolutely, bud. So obviously you mentioned a bit earlier about your friend handing you a wrestling part of the newspaper. If that advertisement hadn't been put in your hand that day, what do you think that Paul would be doing for a living in 2026?
That is a really good question, because I absolutely hated school. I didn't go to college. There was no support back then, in the sense of, I remember they were called careers officers back in the day, and they come around and they ask you what you wanted to do. And my answer was wrestling. I got laughed at. And then they gave me a bunch of courses. One was an electrician's course, one was a bricklayer's course, and all this stuff. But I just academically, I just could not get it. And one of the reasons why was because I was bullied from junior all the way through senior school. So for me, getting through the school day was just what I wanted to do and get home. But again, it's nice to see in schools now that a lot of that has changed and a lot has gone into place to kind of help kids like that. I honestly do not know where I would be now if it wasn't for wrestling, because wrestling's led me to so many other avenues. Like, I'm a qualified personal trainer and gym instructor that came about through funding from wrestling. My wife my stepson, my children, they wouldn't be around if I didn't meet them through wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be a completely different thing for me, and I dread to think what I'd actually be doing. I'm not even sure I'd be here now, to be quite honest.
Okay, mate. So, as you mentioned, this year is your 21-year anniversary in the wrestling business. It's going to be a bit of a difficult question, this.
Mhm.
What has been some of your most memorable moments or matches so far?
So I have been extremely lucky to have been able to work with some legends and absolute icons that I grew up idolizing. For example, the franchise Shane Douglas was always one of my favorite wrestlers. And in 2016, I had the opportunity to work with him. The Native American Tatanka, like I got to work with him, and I remember being a 9-year-old kid shouting and screaming at the TV because he turned heel on Lex Luger and went with the $1 Million Man. I remember telling him that, and he laughed his ass off at that. Also, as well, Billy Gunn, X-Pac. I've even wrestled Tony Storm in an intergender match, and there's countless others that I forget about. And then I would just randomly see a DVD case from 10 years ago. I can't remember my PIN number to my bank card. I can't remember the Sky code. But if you show me a DVD case from 10 years ago, I can remember where it was and what I did. That is how silly my brain is. Again, like you mentioned, championships held, getting to work with some World of Sport legends like Johnny Kidd, Danny Boy Collins. The list is endless as well with people like that. Mal Sanders, superstar Mal Sanders, James Mason, people like that as well. And just what I always wanted to do with this was to be good at something. It didn't matter if I was champion. I just wanted people to think, "Oh, Paul Malen, he's good at this. You know, he's here," and being a good hand, somebody that could work with anybody and provide a decent match. Which I'd like to think I've done that. I don't think I'm that bad, even to this day.
Absolutely, mate. Would you say that you are that typical dad that when you see someone on TV that you've worked with, you'll say to your son, "Oh, I've worked with them. Oh, I've worked with that person. I've worked with that person." And they're like, "Dad, we know. Shut up." Is it that type of thing?
Yeah, I tell the same stories quite a lot, and my wife just sits there now. Yeah, she told us before. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's me.
Fantastic, mate. So obviously, your style of wrestling is a bridge between the classic British technicality and modern high impact wrestling. How do you balance staying true to British roots while keeping up with the faster, more athletic pace of today's younger talent?
That's a good question. Wrestling's always been the variety show. Not every match should be the same as the one before it, in my opinion. Anyway, I guess it kind of depends what audience you're performing in front of and what shows you're performing in front of. We know that there's promotions out there that have their different styles, and the people that go to those shows pay to watch those different styles of wrestling. For me, whether I'm a babyface or a heel, my job is to adapt to the person that I'm working with.
Mhm.
If I'm working with a smaller guy that has a faster style, then obviously I'll be trying to work to their style, but make them work to my style as well. If I'm working with a bigger guy, it means I'm going to probably get thrown around a little bit more, or it means that I'm going to have to pick up the pace a little bit. It's constantly thinking, and again, taking a look at what audience you're in front of, which this will probably come up quite a lot in this podcast. Taking a look at the audience that you're in front of and giving them what hasn't been given to them yet.
Mhm.
And that's important. And it's important to watch the matches that have been on before you. Or if you're working for a new promotion, then doing some research into the matches that are on their cards, or kind of trying to get a grasp of what their promoter or their booker likes. And just, again, aiming to please them, but aiming to give the audience something that they will remember you for, and adapting to whoever you're working with.
Absolutely. So, for the past 20 years, you've seen the industry change from when you first started to now. Has there ever been sort of like, have you ever come across someone that you're working with that you've had a problem with or anything like that? Has anyone ever given you any, for like example, has anyone ever treated you badly in the ring, sort of thing? If they've either not missold or something like that.
I try not to remember the bad experiences. It's hard to not forget the bad experiences sometimes. I'd say the only guy was, and this is going back to 2014.
Mhm.
The only guy was probably the promoter of CZW, which was DJ Hyde, which had come over for a tour with Southside Wrestling at one point. I remember having to wrestle him, and he just wasn't very nice. I don't think he wanted to necessarily be there. If I remember rightly, he'd had like a barbed wire death match the night before. So he was absolutely like riddled in plasters and bandages and stuff like that. And I don't remember it being a long match. I remember it hurting quite a lot. And I remember him not really wanting to communicate with me or anything like that. But again, and this is another lesson, like you're not going to get on with everybody. You're not going to be best friends with everybody. But sometimes, not in this case for this match, because it wasn't a 5-star match, sometimes that creates a good match. Because from thinking about my close friends and stuff, I don't think I've ever had a match with one of my close friends. There's one match. I don't think I've ever had a match with my close friends where I've been like, "Oh, that was perfect. It didn't go wrong at all at any point." Whereas I've had matches with people that I don't know, and it's gone absolutely swimmingly, and you thought, "Wow, like that was really surprising. We've never met before. We've never spoken before. We probably will never speak again because we're two very different people." But yeah, to answer your question, because I tripped off a little bit. Yeah, DJ Hyde was the only one, just because I just felt like he didn't want to be there.
Absolutely, bud. Absolutely. So, you held holding the LDN Capital Championship for quite a couple of years. How did you challenge yourself to keep that title reign from feeling stagnant at all? And how did your relationship with that belt change over nearly a decade?
So with LDN Wrestling, that was a touring company. So it wasn't very often that you were in the same venue week to week. So it was quite easy traveling all over the country, so to speak, to kind of stay relevant and not be stale, because it was
Mhm.
a different audience all of the time. It was a case of not allowing yourself to get too complacent. That's the word I'm looking for. Not allowing
Mm.
yourself to get too complacent and just relying on doing the same old thing every single time. Finding new ways to get creative and inventive with finishes and with starts of matches and stuff. Again, keeping the gear fresh, the look enhanced, promo photographs and stuff like that. I was the LDN Capital Wrestling Champion for I can't remember how many years. I think I was champion twice. And now I was the British Heavyweight Champion twice as well. And I got to wrestle with the battling barbarian Carl Kramer, again, who's no longer with us, a couple of times. And he's somebody that I learned quite a lot from as well. But it's easier with the touring promotions because you're never in the same venue. You probably go to the same venue twice a year, or something like that. So it's quite easy to kind of pull that off.
Absolutely, bud. So, when I was doing my research, you've won quite a few championships, but if I'm honest, quite a few. How would you say you prepare yourself both mentally and physically for such big matches like title matches?
So my opinion is a lot different now to when it was when I won my first championship. Because when I first won, I think it was the RDW Real Deal Wrestling Middleweight Championship. I had no thought process into, wow, how am I going to perform as a champion? because I was too busy being so excited and marking out, wow, I've won my first championship and I'm only 2 years in. And it was all about showing off about being champion and not thinking about, okay, how am I going to enhance the show and add to the show and continue to, which that is the most important thing. If you are, and this is going out to anybody that's wrestling, whether they're new or whether they've been doing it for years, if somebody puts a championship on you, it's because they are trusting you with this. And the point is to not only enhance yourself, but enhance the product that you are a part of. When you are wrestling as a champion, your style has to change in the sense of, again, you are adapting to the many different opponents that you will be in the ring with. You have to think of the story to each match. The story to each match is you are defending this championship and you are doing everything that you can to retain this championship.
Mm-hmm.
If you lose this championship, who knows if you will ever get another shot at it again. I always enjoyed the learning experience of working as a champion, working with more experienced wrestlers, because they really taught me how to perform in main events like street fights, like 45-minute to an hour-long matches, how you stage and stagger those matches and stuff. And also as well, performing a championship match and getting given 5 or 6 minutes. Again, there's so many different ways to learn this, but as a champion, the style of match that you have has to change because you're being put up here, whether you're on first defending the title or whether you're on last defending the championship. It's really important.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. So we're going to go over to talking about your life, your role as a coach for a couple of bud. So as we know, you're now a primary architect of the next generation through Aspire Wrestling Alliance. What is the one rule or piece of etiquette that you refuse to let die in your training sessions?
So it's funny really, because we teach adults. Our adults classes are from 14 and up, but then we teach kids wrestling classes from 6 to 14.
Mm-hmm.
In the kids classes, we instill it in them. You say thank you, you shake the trainer's hands, you say hello, you say goodbye. You're kind and courteous to everybody, you're supportive to everybody, which we know if anybody has kids out there, teaching that is quite hard and quite difficult. And it takes a great deal of patience. Like, I never would have thought to myself that I would be in a wrestling school teaching kids how to wrestle. We've had several wrestling events when our kids have become performers and they've performed in front of up to 200 people, raising money for different charities and stuff like that, and sometimes put on better matches than the adults, I have to say. Again, etiquette, basic etiquette, helping with the ring, turning up, being as helpful as possible, shaking everybody's hands, going into the match and doing everything you can for the good of the match, not for the good of yourself. Staying around to help with the ring afterwards, which I've found over the past few years, getting back into this a little bit more, is kind of, that's dying, because you have people that are on in the first half, and then in the interval, I've got to shoot. So, well, why have you got to shoot? Oh, just got to shoot. Well, you should be watching the guys in the main event and learning from them and sticking around to help with the chairs and help the matches, help with the ring. Sorry. Again, basic etiquette, which is a dying art, in my opinion, which really shouldn't be, because again, this is, in my opinion, what's keeping it alive, or what it should be keeping it alive. The respect that the wrestlers have for each other, and not only that, the respect that the younger wrestlers, the less experienced wrestlers, should be learning firsthand from the more experienced as well.
Absolutely, mate. So, how would you say that you change your coaching style to accommodate students? So, if you're teaching adults in one class and then teaching children in another class, how do you change your coaching style for those two classes, if at all?
So I think with both classes, it's a case of, if somebody thinks they can't do something,
Mhm.
My job and the other coaches' jobs is to convince them and show them that they can. Especially with kids, self-confidence is a huge, or lack of self-confidence is a huge thing. I was a very unconfident child, and I just wish wrestling was around then, because I do think my childhood would have been a lot different. And I know we make a massive difference to a lot of kids that we coach as well. What's really cool about what we do as well is the main coaches of the kids classes predominantly are adults that started in the kids classes years before. So the kids are getting coached by people that started out as kids. So it's a great advert, and they're great role models for them to look up to. Again, adults being harsh and testing them when possible, not in the sense of bullying them or anything like that, but in the sense of somebody says they can't do something, I'm going to try hell for leather to prove to them that they can. And when they finally do it, I will tell them, you said you couldn't, now you can do it. Now you go and help somebody else. Now you go and convince somebody else. And the main thing is support as well, which I think is lacking in quite a lot these days. People supporting each other. What I like to think of with our classes is we get classes of up to 20 to 30 adults. So it's very hectic, and it's really hard for one or two trainers to look around the room and see if somebody's struggling. If somebody is struggling, it's up to the other students as well to notice this and pull the other person up with them and go with them and tell them that they can.
Absolutely fantastic. So, as we know, in the ring, success is measured by wins and titles. For you as a coach, what does a win look like for you?
A win for me, and I know that I can speak for the other coaches with this as well. A win for me is that moment when somebody realizes that they've done something that they thought that they couldn't, or seeing a little bit of self-confidence grow in them, or watch somebody that starts out, say in January, saying that they have no confidence, and then by the time the next January comes around, seeing a complete turnaround and almost a different person, just because of the effort that they put in and the rewards that they're reaping because of it. That is the way I measure wins.
Fantastic stuff, mate. At what point in your career did you realize that you wanted to become a trainer? Was there like a specific moment where you felt more satisfaction watching a student succeed rather than watching the match yourself?
It's funny because when it first came along, I didn't want to be a trainer.
Mm.
I'd been wrestling full time for 5 or 6 years, and then I thought it's time to slow down a little bit. Just recently, I had a child as well, so I was like, okay, I don't want to be out and around on the road and stuff like that. And a job came up around teaching wrestling, and it was only for like 2 hours a week at that point. And I remember walking into the venue, and it was just bare bones. Like there was a frame of a wrestling ring, and there was like stuff hanging off the ceilings and stuff. And I thought, this isn't going to work. I was like, Paul, just take the payday once a week. And when I got told the story of the place, working around using wrestling to kind of help people with mental health issues. Again, this is me being completely honest. Like working with people with mental health issues, I thought, oh, this isn't going to work. It'll last a month. And now we're 10 years in. But little did I realize when I started doing this that it was me myself that needed the place more than the students, because again, we mask quite a lot and we kind of hide away from quite a lot. And I found that wrestling full time was me running away from quite a lot. So when I started teaching, again, that was slowly but surely transitioning into a new phase of my life. And right now, I couldn't see myself doing anything else. The coaching means more to me than the actual wrestling does.
Fantastic stuff, mate. Last question before we get some Instagram questions, and then we'll move on to the second part of the talk, bud. You've obviously been seen in the ring with your students on shows before. Is there a different kind of pressure when you're wrestling someone that you've trained, or do you feel sort of like a proud dad moment?
I think it's the other way around. I tend to I'm as cool as a cucumber. I hate that saying, but I'm as cool as a cucumber when I wrestle, because I've been doing it for so long now. It's second nature. It's like putting on old boots. I could actually do it with my eyes closed if I wanted to. But I know the students feel pressure wrestling me, and I try to tell them that they don't need to. Again, it's one of those things which you get the first one out of the way, and you kind of feel, oh, that was easier than I thought it was. But again, I do understand because I remember wrestling my trainer and feeling the same way, or wrestling more experienced people and being shaken before you're going out for the match because you're just so worried about how it's going to go and stuff like that. But again, one thing I learned over the years that I've been doing it is I feel confident if I don't feel confident outside, the one thing I do feel confident is what I do inside of the ring. I know I'm going to be okay. I know I'm going to look after the person I'm wrestling with. I know I'm going to be okay because I know I'm going to look after myself as well.
Fantastic stuff, mate. Got a couple of Instagram questions for you, bud. First one is from Azrael, who asks, does Paul know how important he is to British wrestling and professional wrestling as a whole?
Oh, bless. No, I don't, but I do appreciate that. And it means a lot.
Absolutely. One from Marty Slick, who asks two questions. First one is, any advice for someone that massively overthinks things both in ring and life generally?
Stop. Again, we were talking earlier about how you measure wins. And I think, if anything, setting short goals, simple goals, which you can attain. I'm not saying easily attain, but they are easier to attain. Instead of aiming for the top of the mountain as the first goal, aim for the first hurdle, the first core, then aim for the next part, then aim for the next part. Again, I massively overthink quite a lot as well. And the only way to get around it is think to yourself, why? Is it going to help or hinder you being like that? The easiest thing to do as well, if you're feeling like that, is talk to somebody about it. Because again, we could be massively overthinking. So, like, I could have been massively overthinking doing this podcast today, and I could have not shown up because I don't know what questions Jim's going to ask me. But I've gone in, and I just know I'm going to answer these questions to the best of my ability, and that's all you can do. Do anything in your life to the best of your ability, and take pride in the fact knowing that you have tried your best.
Absolutely, mate. Could not put that better myself. Second question from Marty is, what are the things, such as activities and hobbies, that helps you feel better when overwhelmed?
Collecting around 400 comic books, which is getting me into trouble at home. Yeah. I started collecting comic books around just under 2 years ago now. Like comic books, I love gaming. I love movies. I love TV shows. I love watching wrestling. Again, just little things like that. And the gym, they're massively things in my life that I couldn't do without, because they are routine and they are the things that kind of ground me when I need it.
Absolutely, but I'm going to extend on that previous one from Marty. What's your go-to film? What's your go-to wrestling match? And what's your go-to other thing that you like to go to?
Go-to film. I love horror movies. One of my favorite horror movies is The Thing, the Kurt Russell, John Carpenter Thing movie. TV series. I'm a massive fan of The Walking Dead. I've recently watched a TV show about wrestling called Heels. If nobody's watched that yet, that's a really good show. Mobland as well. I'm watching that, and I'm absolutely hooked on Mobland. Professional wrestling matches. That's a really good question. If I'm looking for technical wrestling, Chris Benoit, Bret the Hitman Hart from WCW Nitro, which was a Owen Hart memorial match. If I'm looking for character based with the audience going absolutely insane, some people might disagree with me, but Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior from WrestleMania 6. You cannot get more of a reaction from doing absolutely very little. They are two matches that I could watch. If I'm being completely honest now, WrestleMania has me for 3 matches, which is Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes, which is Roman Reigns and CM Punk. Those 2 matches are just completely story driven for me. I'm so looking forward to that. And then again, the latest announcement, which is Brock Lesnar and Obafemi. They are 3 matches that I am completely looking forward to watching, completely as a fan. I'm not going to sit there and watch and be like, oh, they should have done it this way. They should have done it this way. I'm just looking forward to watching them as a fan.
Absolutely, bud. Last Instagram question is from Oliver Muzzy, who asks, what's the most important lesson you have learned in your career?
Okay. Most important lesson I've learned in my career is to enjoy it. Because believe it or not, I've been wrestling for a long time, and for the majority of the time, I wasn't enjoying it for as much as I should have been. Because I did feel constant pressure to be performing to a higher standard. I was feeling constant pressure to stay healthy, because if I had to sit out for a little while, somebody else would be in to take my spot in a heartbeat. The pressure of making enough money to survive from it. The pressure of not being at home enough and it causing issues. All these little things that add up and make you enjoy it less. So enjoy it and take plenty of pictures.
Absolutely, bud. Fantastic. Thank you so much, guys, for your questions. Really do appreciate it. Guys, if you've got any questions for Paul whatsoever, put them in the comments and we'll try and get them to Paul, time depending. Paul, if it's okay with you, I'd like to jump into the mental health questions.
Yep, sure.
Okay, guys, we're back in 2 seconds. Okay, Paul, kick us off with the second part, but what is your biggest fear?
So, biggest fear. It's a tough one, really, because I've always been scared of quite a lot in my life. I think thinking back now as a 41-year-old man, the thought of being forgotten and / not remembered, that is a massive thing for me. And that comes from when my mum was on a deathbed. I remember talking to her about my 2 children, going, oh, just talk to them about me sometimes, because it would be nice to be remembered. And that was something that was kind of like a light bulb going off in my head, like, wow, like she has the same fear that I do. And ever since then, it's just stuck with me. Like, that's my main fear.
Absolutely, bud. So you've been quite open about your mental health journey so far in your career. Can you share a bit about when you first started experiencing these struggles?
So with mental health, I remember, like I said earlier, always hating school. Never enjoyed school. Academically, I did terrible in a sense. But when I left school and I lost that routine of where I had to be, what I had to do, that's when I started struggling. And I remember being 16 and crying to my mum, telling my mum that I was depressed. And my mum's answer to that was, don't be silly, you can't be depressed, you're 16. And that, for me, that was like, okay, got to be stronger. And it was almost like me taking a bat and beating it down and keeping it at bay for many years until I turned 30, when it all came back to haunt me again. So when I was 16. So looking at me now, that's been a hell of a long time struggling with that.
Absolutely, bud. Do you think that the stigma that obviously men in particular have been brought up to abide by is man up, get on with it, sort of thing? Do you think that that is a big hindrance to people's actual mental health problems?
Absolutely, it was to mine. Definitely was to mine. Like I said, growing up, I never feared my dad. I feared my mum because she was the leader of the house. And throughout all of the years, I think I only ever saw my mum cry twice, and never cried around her, anything like that. It's definitely something like that. And being in wrestling for all those years before, you couldn't show that kind of weakness, because if you did, again, you probably wouldn't be going back there again. You won't be able to talk about things like this because you had all of these wrestlers back then that were masking this and hiding this. And there's so many wrestlers now that aren't with us because of that. Again, naming a few, you got Lionheart, you got Ryan Smile, the guy that I was speaking about earlier that followed me to the car, Mark. He sadly took his life due to mental health issues as well. And the list is endless. And these are all people that we were kind of a product of society then, and thankfully it's a lot more open now, and there's a lot more help now around that kind of thing.
Absolutely, bud. Is there any specific challenges related to mental health that you faced in your career so far? I've got a couple of examples: performance anxiety, pressure, travel, body imagery, and social media scrutiny. Do any of those coincide with yourself?
All of the above. All of the above. So trying to touch base on all of those there, with us as performers, we are highly critical of ourselves, and I can barely watch a wrestling match with me in it. If I hear my music, like at a disco or anything like that, or a wedding, my wife goes, "Oh, it's your music." I hate it. It makes me cringe because it makes me think of walking to the ring. Body imagery, definitely. I think everybody's like that. You can never be too big. You can never be too skinny. You can never be too muscular. You can never be too tanned. It causes issues with people taking things to enhance themselves as well, and all of this. Social media scrutiny, not really. I tend to not really listen to what people say either, because there's so many people that like to just be negative about things that they're watching or events that they're going to. Definitely for me, the anxiety of performing well enough, and the fear of being replaced, and it leads to you being quite you're not trusting anybody. I'm trying to think of the word for that. Not trusting anybody. That as well leads to a lot of issues. Like, I'm quite open. Wrestling saved my life, but also it's led to quite a lot of other issues as well, which I'm sure there'd be quite a lot of other wrestlers that would touch base and agree on with that as well.
Mhm. Absolutely, but you, you speak about obviously the fear of being replaced by other wrestlers. Did you ever find yourself sort of having negative thoughts towards other people because if they were maybe younger, if they were maybe a bit quicker, if they were a different style to you? Does there any like negative thoughts ever cross your mind when it comes to other people in that sense?
Definitely, definitely. That's me being openly honest as well. If you think negatively about yourself, the first thing you're going to do is think negatively about somebody else and blame somebody else. And again, that's me being honest. It's not a time in my life I was proud of at all, but I spent a lot of my career wanting what somebody else had.
Hmm.
And that's a dangerous way of thinking, especially when no matter how hard you try, no matter what you attain, you will always want something else.
Absolutely, bud. Has there been any particular moments or periods in your career where your struggles have felt particularly overwhelming at all?
Yes, definitely. I think around just before COVID was when I was thinking I might have to stop for a little bit because
Mhm.
it was getting quite bad then. But then obviously COVID came around. I didn't really have a choice in the matter. And I remember when COVID started, it honestly felt like my body was going into remission.
Mhm.
I could just feel all of these aches and pains catching up on me, barely being able to, it sounds silly, but it's absolutely true. Barely being able to bend over to touch my toes or tie my shoelaces because of how my body was feeling. And having no choice to stop and kind of again sit back and assess the way you are and understand that things need to change. This is why I'm into it again now. I'm touring around doing a little bit of wrestling now, not as much as I used to, but my main goal with this now is to again enjoy it because I spent so long not enjoying it. And as well, making lasting memories, impressions, and helping others at the same time as well. That's why wanting to be a part of this and do this and particularly talk about things that I don't get to talk about often, like what we're talking about now, that could
Mhm.
potentially help somebody else in the meantime as well.
Definitely, mate. So obviously, when things resumed back in when COVID ended, it was quite a while before you got back into a ring. When you first took your bump after coming back from COVID, did that did it hurt more, or did it hurt sort of like, was it a bit like a, oh yeah, that still hurts sort of thing?
It felt like I'd been shot with a shotgun, so it definitely hurt more.
And did that play a contributing factor to any negative thoughts with your mental health, possibly thinking that you need to pack this in because it's obviously taking a bigger toll on your body?
So it's strange because over lockdown, I got into the best shape of my life.
Mhm.
Um, when I say the best shape of my life, I mean the best shape I've ever been in the 41 years I've been on this earth. But I was so unhappy
Mhm.
because again, no matter how low my body fat percentage was or how tanned I was, it was never enough. It was a constant struggle for me weighing food and sticking to a strict regime of what I could eat and what I couldn't eat. And in no way am I in the best shape now, but I'm grateful that I'm kind of out of that mindset because that was really unhealthy for me, and it led to quite a lot of breakdowns for me. So it's funny because these photos come up on Facebook memories. These photos come up every year, and every year I think to myself, God, like that photo, I looked so amazing, but I felt so bad. It's insane. It's insane the way the human body works, but it's even more insane how the brain works as well. And little things like that.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. Um, do you think that you have ever suffered from imposter syndrome whatsoever in your career, whether that be with your performances or, like you say, with your body weight?
Definitely. And I kind of listen to a lot of people now that tell me that they suffer with imposter syndrome. And there's no easy way around it. It's again, it just takes a lot of people encouraging you and telling you that these intrusive thoughts, they aren't necessarily real. But imposter syndrome, that's probably exactly what I was suffering with. And in fact, it's probably something that I've suffered with for pretty much the majority of my wrestling career as well.
Mhm. When you're having when you were having those thoughts of imposter syndrome, was there any type of method that you used to sort of like snap yourself out of it at all?
Um, for me, it was keeping as ridiculously busy as I could be.
Mm.
So constantly going to the gym, working out, going for runs, staying on the road, wrestling, sleeping for a couple of hours, and then getting up and going out on the road again and getting to the next show, things like that. It's again, but it's not a healthy way of going around it because sometimes you do have to face these things and you do have to think about these things and you do have to talk about these things as well.
Would you say that that is your is the coping mechanism that you use when your mental problems are particularly overwhelming at all?
Yeah, definitely. It's for me now. I'm still a glutton for punishment. I still live out of a bat, even though I've lived in the same house now for 6 or 7 years. I still have my wrestling bag that is full of all of my wrestling gear, and it's again, that's my crutch, so to speak. I cannot have that bag empty. It is there just in case. I have no idea why, but knowing it is there is a little bit of a comfort to me. And like I said, getting into comic books, and I've noticed when I am feeling those thoughts, just sitting down, relaxing. The sun's out now, which is even better. Reading a book, reading a comic book, and just thinking, wow, that felt so much better for that. It's just tiny little things, and not every person's the same. Everybody will have their different coping mechanisms, and that's okay. And sometimes these coping mechanisms might seem like the strangest thing, and people will comment like, wow, that's weird. It's like, well, no, think about it. It's something that somebody likes. Not everybody's going to like the same thing, but that's the beauty of it, because when you do meet people that do, then it means a lot more to you.
Absolutely, bud. What kind of support system would you say that you rely on both within and outside of wrestling?
So everybody at Aspire is so supportive and I know I'm really bad at responding to it as well. Like you will always get, oh, I'm okay from me. If you come to me and ask me if I'm all right, I will never tell you, no, I'm not. You might get sometimes, oh, I've been better. The majority of the time, I'm okay, I'm fine, even though I'm not. But that's still me kind of stepping into old boots with the behavior that I was before, and I am trying to be more open about it, which is why I'm doing things like this. Have an incredible support system at Aspire, have a wife at home that puts up with my changing mood swings and my 400 comic books that are scattered around the place, and all my ridiculous things that I buy, all in the sense of escapism and making myself feel better. And having a support system is incredibly important.
Absolutely, bud. Slight tangent before we carry on. What was your wife's reaction when you told her that you were a professional wrestler?
It's funny because she knew I was a professional wrestler because she was in the audience booing me. And my stepson, who is now 17, I remember being a 6-year-old in the audience, throwing stuff at me and booing me, performing in front of them. Again, so it wasn't a shock. It was anything like that. I don't think. I think it was more of a shock to her mother, my mother-in-law. He goes, "Oh yeah, I'm going out with this wrestler." He's like, "You're going out with him? Like he's a bad guy." You know, it wasn't a shock.
What are you going out with for? He's a bastard.
Yeah, pretty much.
But just playing into the kayfabe, fantastic. Bud.
Yeah.
So for anybody that's watching, bud, whether they are a wrestler, a fan, or just someone random that's come across this podcast, what message would you give to that person who's struggling with their mental health in silence?
So, and this is just going from what I've learned, and again, my opinions might not be the same as everybody else's. Asking for help is very, very important, but sooner or later, sometime you have to face something on your own.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't get too reliant on everybody else, because we all know when the lights go out at the end of the night and you're in bed, majority of the time that's when I face my demons, and it's when I'm laying there eyes wide looking up at the ceiling. And you have to learn to persevere. So it's okay to ask for help, but try to persevere with this as well. And this is going from me going through a course of CBT therapy last year for the first time ever. It wasn't the therapy sessions that were the hardest part. It was the initial consultation that was the hardest, because I was having to answer simple answers, yes or no, to some of the hardest questions that I've ever been asked in my life. answering those questions was really difficult. But what I gained from the therapy was that there's something wrong, but there's nothing wrong with me. And also as well, and it's if you are doing something that you genuinely enjoy, then that's great. For me, I learned for myself that I am incredibly fortunate to be doing something that is an extension of myself. And when I heard that, it was like a light bulb went off in my head, because it made me realize, because there's so many people out there that don't get to do what they want to for many different reasons, whether it be illness, disability, whether it be for situations like work and stuff like that. It's there's so many people out there that don't get to do what they want to do for so many different reasons. And for 21 years, I've been able to be a part of professional wrestling, which is, I could never imagine doing anything else. And now I'm in a phase in my life where I'm getting to coach people and enjoy watching people grow and learn. So my advice is, if you're looking for something, keep looking, because you might just find it. And as well, talk about things. If you genuinely need help, find that help. But learn to persevere with anything that you face. That's my advice.
Fantastic, mate. Thank you so much for that. Really appreciate that. So you mentioned obviously about when the lights go out and there is that come down after a show. How have you learned to navigate that specific lonely transition when obviously you're driving home after a show without letting it spiral into a dark place?
That's a good word, navigating, because I think I've been navigating for the majority of my life. We all know, if you know, no great sailor learns to be a sailor on safe waters. It's stormy seas. Again, practice those techniques that make you feel better, and keep practicing until they become second nature. And again, for me, I know it's hard sometimes, because a lot of people that wrestle, they go and they'll work 9 till 5 and they'll have families to look after and stuff like that. So it's kind of hard to switch off. And I struggle to switch off, massively do. Like doing events, and I'll go to bed at 2 in the morning and I'll be awake until 4 in the morning because my brain struggles to switch off. But again, it's knowing that these little behaviors, they won't last. And I remember watching your latest podcast, and Isaac saying that it's not just one good day or one bad day. It could be weeks. And it's the same for me. You could go through weeks or months of feeling bad, but then you'll have a good day or a good week or a good few weeks. It's understanding as well that these times are going to come and go. They don't last. If they do last, it means you do need help. But again, just knowing that these times come and go, and knowing the things that make you feel better to keep you out of those situations and thinking about those dark times.
Absolutely, mate. Fantastic. So you've helped build Aspire Wrestling Alliance into quite a community interested company. Focuses heavily on ADHD, autism, and mental health. Do you feel that by providing a safe space for others who are struggling, you've also subconsciously built a sanctuary for yourself?
Yeah, definitely. It's, again, Aspire is my safe space, as much as it is anybody else's. It's the first place I think about going to when I'm feeling rubbish. We work with people of all ages that suffer with ADHD, autism, neurodivergent, depression. We work with kids that are kind of excluded from sports in school because they have disabilities which keep them away from that, or they don't feel confident or comfortable enough to be joining in with those things. So it's our job to kind of help them channel that into something positive within the walls of Aspire and what we do. And again, there's no better feeling than seeing them do that. And there's so many countless stories I could share with you. We'd be here for hours. But again, that's what I think sets us apart and different from a lot of promotions out there, because you never see these stories shared. It genuinely is a safe space for those around, and it is a space where people can learn a lot about themselves and improve, not only improve, but improve with the help of others and create friendships that last hopefully forever.
Absolutely brilliant, mate. That's fantastic. So, for someone who's got a career spanning over 20 years now, how do you believe that the professional wrestling industry can better support its performance mental well-being?
I think it already is, because a lot of promotions are talking about mental health now, and
Mhm.
it's widely more talked about now than it was back then. And I think it's because sadly we've had to learn from the mistakes where other people have lost their lives and stuff. Um, I think more than anything, it's to keep going with that and be as inclusive to everybody as possible. And again, look after each other, not only in the ring, but out of the ring as well. That's really important.
Absolutely, bud. As I start to wrap up now, Paul, what role would you say wrestling has played in your overall mental health journey? Would you say that it's been a source of strength? Has it been a challenge, or has it been a bit of both?
It's definitely been a bit of both. It's taught me a lot about myself, and I am riddled in scars on this face and this body, inside with scars as well. But it's everything has brought me to this point that I'm at now. And as unhappy as I am some days, because I still struggle with my mental health. I'm no stranger to that. It's sometimes I have my good days, sometimes I have my really bad days, sometimes I have my good days. But I know for a fact, as I pointed out earlier, I'm in a great position. I'm extremely fortunate to be in, and I'm really fortunate to have the people that I have around me, and that has come because of the things that I've experienced. So in turn, I wouldn't change anything that I've experienced at all, because it probably wouldn't have led me to where I am now.
Absolutely, mate. So as we go into the last couple of questions, Paul, these last couple of questions are a bit more light-hearted, just because obviously talk about mental health can get a bit a
Sure.
bit too much for some people. Uh, when you decide to retire, and also when you decide to step away from coaching, what do you want your legacy to be as Paul Malen and also as the coach at Alliance?
Um, like I pointed out earlier, to have been known as for being good, to be known for being a good wrestler. I'm not looking to be known as this mega star or anything like that, just to be good at what I wanted to be good at as a child. All I ever wanted to be was a wrestler. Um, as a coach, being known for somebody that tried, that was fair, that was impartial, that again was as helpful as they possibly could have been to leave a good impression on the professional wrestling business.
Brilliant, mate. What are your aspirations and goals within professional wrestling for the future?
So, like I said, at the moment, I've got my toes dipped into wrestling again. I'm kind of treading the water, seeing how I'm going to do a little bit. For me, it's a case of looking to enjoy it again. I
Mhm.
don't know how many years of wrestling. I mean, I'm only 40. I'm 41 this year, so I'm not even probably aged to say I'm retiring. Um, for as long as I'm doing it, just to enjoy it, to perform in front of some great crowds, in front of venues that I've never been in before, to potentially work with some of my students and some people that I've never worked with before as well, and hopefully teach them and learn a lot myself as well. Um, again, in terms of Aspire, just to continue to grow that, not only with the training classes, but the shows, the events that we put on as well. We've got a couple of really good ones coming up. Our 10-year anniversary show is in May, hoping for that to be absolutely mega. But again, for me, and again, we talk about healing and stuff like that, and healing comes in many forms. And for me, and this only just dawned on me recently, but I think getting back into the ring for me is a form of healing. I didn't think of it that way until recently, but that's why I'm trying to keep up with it, because I think it is good for me. So I don't say, okay, I'm just not going to wrestle anymore because I'm like, I don't know, I just don't feel confident doing it, which is a regular struggle with me. Confidence, self-confidence. It's funny, I struggle with my self-confidence, and I'm teaching other people about self-confidence. So that's healing in itself. So I think that for me is the main objective with everything.
Fantastic, bud. So last question, Paul. You are in a War Games match. Who is on your War Games team? And I want you to, and you can only pick from the UK wrestling scene.
Oh, is this 4 or 5?
So it's you and 4 others.
Okay. That's a really good question. You got me stumped now. Only from the UK wrestling scene. Okay.
Yes, please.
Myself, Bullet. You heard of Bullet? You know Bullet? He's absolutely massive. I'll have to go with the Aspire Wrestling champion, Eddie Cross. And one more. I'm going to pick a female. I'm going to go with the Deadly Nightshade, because I've been watching her stuff. Knew Lucy quite a few years ago, but she's doing amazing at the moment. So yeah, there's my 4.
Fantastic. There we are, guys. That is the end of today's episode of the Unseen Battles. I want to thank Paul so much for joining me, man.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Paul. If there's anything you want to plug at all, if there's anything you want to get off your chest, feel free, my friend, and then we'll end the stream.
Excellent. Yep. Just find Aspire Wrestling on Instagram, on Facebook. Check out our events. Check out our training school as well. And feel free to send over any more questions and share the stories and like the posts and stuff. And keep following the Unseen Battles as well. Really great podcast. Thank you very much, Jim.
Absolutely no problem, Paul. Thanks so much. So, guys, there we are. That is the end of today's episode. Make sure to let us know who you want on the podcast in the future in the comments below. Like Paul said, go check out Aspire. Go check them out. Also, if you look at the QR code just above my head, that is a link to Paul's Instagram. So make sure you go and check that out. And we'll see you guys later. As always, guys, it's okay to talk. We'll see you guys later.